Bonsai Expo, because it's a local product, right? And your club is part of it. And you can see what other people who live in your general region of the country are up to. And you get to meet people, which is always a helpful thing, you know? People make friends at the expo, they see each other maybe once a year at the expo, and it carries on year to year. I hope that you'll make the time to come and participate. And Ryan Neal will be the guest artist. There'll be information going out soon about that. I have a club contact every year for every club. Your club contact is Gabe Manetti, and I send information to him, but I also send out to a general mailing list. And anybody who wants to be on that list can be. All you need to do is send me an email and say, I want to be on the Expo mailing list, and I'll add your name to the list. And then you'll get the information directly from me. Otherwise, you'll get it from Gabe sooner or later. Yes, so my email, ajoura, A-J-O-U-R-A, at ncarboretum.org. Or you could just go to the Arboretum website and you'll find it there somewhere. So I'm going to talk briefly about the two things that I brought in for show and tell, and then we'll take a little break, and then I'll work on the tree that I brought as a demo piece today. So this is an American larch, also called a tamarack tree, right? When you go up into the northeast and on up into Canada, these are the most common trees. They're everywhere up there. They like it cold. If you were to try to grow an American larch here, you might not be successful because it gets too hot for them in the summertime. But Asheville, being up at 2,300 feet, has a different climate than you do here, and we're a little bit cooler. At least for the time being we are. There are numerous species that I observe in our area that have grown historically in Western North Carolina that are now suffering and not doing well. Colorado blue spruce comes to mind immediately. It's hard to find a good-looking spruce anymore in Asheville because they've all got some kind of disease. I think they're stressed out because it's getting too warm for them. On the other hand, you have a species like Arizona cypress, which years ago was not viable in Western North Carolina because sooner or later we'd have a cold enough winter that it would kill it, or at least kill it down to the ground. That doesn't happen anymore. You can plant Arizona cypress in Asheville and it does just fine. So this plant, I don't know. I don't know how long it'll be viable. But I think Asheville is probably as far south as you can grow American larch without special accommodations. This one came to the collection in 1995, the same year that I first came to speak with this club, by the way. 25th year I've been coming to speak with the people in this club. You're all different now. You know, when I first came to the club, it was full of old people. Now you're all so young.
Please spell your last name.
So there are only a very few people who were here back then in '95, and I want to particularly mention Harold and Tina Johnson, because it dawned on me as I met up with them before the meeting today, that every year that I've come to speak to this club, I've gotten together socially with Harold and Tina beforehand. Years ago, we used to go to a restaurant with a woman named Helen Davis, who was a mainstay of this club for many years, and Felton Jones, who I think started this club. Did he? No, he started the club in Charlotte.
Right.
Yes, and he was a longtime member here, a key member, and a key bonsai person in North Carolina. Well, he used to be here, but that's how it goes with any organization, right? People come and they go. It's very good to see so many folks here. There were a few years among those 25 that have been coming when this row right here would have accommodated all the people that were showing up for meetings. So good for you and good for your club that you've got this much interest. And always I want to acknowledge Barbara, because every year that I come here, it's after the state fair. And so many people testify, like, yeah, I'm here because Barbara talked to me at the state fair. That's a great service that she performs for the club. And I appreciate that. that's how it works, right? That's how it works in a volunteer organization. People step up or they don't. And she steps up. Lots of people step up in this club, and that's why it's such a healthy club. I brought in a few things for show and tell, just because I think that's how club meetings should be. And so anytime I go to a club meeting, this club or any of the other clubs I go visit, I always bring some things to show. And they are not necessarily, you know, the best things we have in our collection, but just things of interest. Like these two, for example, have seasonal color right now. So this is a very simple thing. This is a viburnum. This is a native arrowwood viburnum, Viburnum dentatum. And viburnums are not real likely for bonsai. You can work with them, and if you have access to them, you should work with them just to get the experience, just to have material that's inexpensive that you can mess around with. And so this was a volunteer. It came up as a weed in another pot, and rather than yanking it out and getting rid of it, I gave it its own pot and grew it for a number of years. Grow, cut, grow, cut, grow, cut. That's how it goes. That's how the game's played. Grow it, cut it back. Grow it again, cut it back again. The longer you can keep doing that and keep your plant alive and give it some direction, some shape, the better it's going to look. If you do it for 10 years, it'll look better than it did the second year. If you can do it for 20 years, it'll look better than it did after 10 years, and so on down the line. So this plant's less than 20 years old, right, but more than 10. That's as good as I can get it down to. It's very modest, and yet now that it's going through the seasonal change, it becomes emblematic, right? It becomes a symbol of the time of year that we're in. And so, you know, we got this great world outside, and it's very nice, but sometimes you don't have the time to get out into it, right? And sometimes you just come home from work and you're tired, and you go sit in the backyard and, you know, fiddle with your trees a little bit, and then you see a tree like that, and it reminds you, yes, it's that time of year. It's autumn. The leaves are changing color. They'll be falling off soon. You know, it slows you down a little bit. That's good. It's good to slow down from time to time and take note of the world around you. I think bonsai is a great vehicle for doing that. It actually causes that effect. Slow down. You can't do this quick, right? This takes time. No matter how good you are at it, it still takes time. And slowing down, observing nature, and interacting with nature is all good, healthy stuff. Bonsai has all of that built into it. Another native plant, but not native to North Carolina. As I was saying, this is native to the upper east, northeast of the country, New England, upstate New York, Maine, on into Canada. These things grow by the millions. And people up there like to collect them as collected bonsai. This was collected too. This was collected as a one-year seedling on the shores of Lake Michigan in 1974. And the woman who collected it was a charter member of the Blue Ridge Bonsai Society in Asheville. And I met her by coming and doing programs at their meetings, because I started doing them for them too back in '95. And so she gave this to us not long after I met her, '96, '97. So this has been part of our collection since the mid-'90s. And it's lived its entire life in a pot since the time it was collected as a one-year seedling. And so when you grow a plant in a container, that slows it down, right? Because it has limited access to room for the roots to grow in. Plant in the ground has almost unlimited access. It can stretch its roots out, look for moisture, look for nutrients. A plant in a pot can only go so far as the walls of the pot allow it to go. And then it's dependent on a human being to bring it water, to bring it fertilizer, and so forth. And so for a plant to live so long in a pot is a minor accomplishment in its own right. And you will have a sense of this if you grow bonsai and you succeed at that level. If you keep a plant alive in a pot for 20 years, you'll feel like you've accomplished something. It's not something you want to brag about at parties, but it's still something, you know. It's something to say, like, I've cared for that thing long enough, and it's been dependent on me all this while, and here it is, still alive and successful. And then, of course, if you can style it along the way and bring out its nicer features, then you get to enjoy them too. this tree was trained to be a formal upright right from the beginning. And that is indeed how they grow in nature. They grow straight and tall. Of course, in bonsai, most people prefer a tree that has movement in the trunk and something to give it more character and more visual interest. But the formal upright is the elemental bonsai form, right? It's the simplest form because you don't have to do anything with the trunk, it's just straight. And then you just have to arrange the branches, right? That's all. But it is more simple than a tree that has movement in it. And usually when you see these American larch, they are collected and they usually do have a lot of movement in the trunk. So this is a pretty unusual thing to see a formal upright American larch. Just starting to come into color, the color gets much brighter than this, a bright lemon yellow, just like these will get more orange as time goes by. The subject tree, and we'll take a break in just a moment, the subject tree is a red maple, another native plant. And so you can see, I think, why some people have the misunderstanding that I exclusively like working with native plants. That isn't true. I like working with any plant that lends itself to being made into a bonsai, and some of the very best of them are non-native plants. Hard to beat a trident maple, hard to beat a Chinese elm, hard to beat a Japanese white pine. These are species that have all the characteristics that go well for making a bonsai. But part of my appreciation of nature and of the world of plants is diversity. Diversity, I think, is a very good thing, generally speaking. But in nature, it's what creates interest. You know, when I go into the forest back home, it's not like being in the Pacific Northwest. Those are beautiful forests, right? But there's just a handful of species that makes up the whole forest for hundreds and thousands of acres. You go into the mountains of our state, and there's more diversity there than just about any place else on Earth. And so you have all these different tree species, you have all these different shrubs, you have all these different herbaceous plants. And if you're into plants, this is all wonderful stuff. You know, it gives you different looks. Every plant has its own nature, its own characteristic. And so I appreciate being able to work with native plants because they too can make very nice bonsai. Is it as good as a trident maple? I don't know. Try them both yourself and see. It works. That's the main thing. You can use bonsai techniques like you learn to use on trident maples or on Japanese maples. You use the same techniques on these and it will work. You get a different look. A lot of people say, oh, don't even waste your time with red maples. Their leaves are so big, right? And truly, they'll be bigger than this. A red maple leaf from a tree growing in the ground, it can be as big as your hand. But that doesn't mean that they stay that way. We have many red maple bonsai in our collection, and I have some of them where the leaves on the trees are this big. This big. They do shrink down, just like any maple will, right? If you treat it a certain way. We'll talk about the culture of these things when we come back. And I'll tell you more about this tree and what the plan is for it today. But you've already been subjected to an awful lot of recirculated air, and maybe you'd like to stand up and move around and hit the restroom or get a snack or whatever. And in 5 minutes, I'll start up again on this.